the only show that's 3 dimensions away from Abigail being called Vampire Kidnapping. I'm your host, 3D Jake, and today we're looking at Abigail, released in 2024. Abigail is directed by Radio Silence, which is Matt Benelli and Tyler Gillett, and is written by Stephen Shields and Guy Busick. The movie stars Melissa Barrera, Dan Stevens, Catherine Newton, Will Carver, Kevin Durand, Angus Cloud, Alicia Witt, and Giancarlo Esposito. The movie is essentially about these thieves that are hired by Giancarlo Esposito to kidnap this little girl. And when they kidnap the little girl, they're hoping to get money for ransom from her father, but instead they become hunted as the little girl's a vampire and wants to hunt and kill them for food, as a fun game to her. I will say, when I heard the trailer, I was like, oh, this looks interesting. And I heard that they're working on a vampire flick. This was known, they were working. They said, oh, it might be part of the Universal Monsters, might not. And so I was like, all right, I wanted to see this movie. And they said after Scream 6, that's all they were talking about was, oh, we're making this vampire flick. It's really cool. And so when I saw the trailer, I was really intrigued. And I'm like, okay, this looks great. And the poster was just a little girl in a little dress and it looks like a ballet dress. I'm like, this looks interesting. I'm interested in this movie. So bear in mind, I've not seen the movie when it came out. I heard it flopped in theaters, and I'm like, that sucks, But at the same time, it might not have been good. I don't know. So when it was on Peacock, and I'm like, you know what? I want to check this out. So I went and checked it out, and I will say I love this movie. I was like, at the beginning of the movie, I'm like, okay, it's kind of like Panic Room in a way, and then it just turns into a vampire flick. And it kind of reminded me of From Dusk Till Dawn, when you're watching From Dusk Till Dawn, it's a heist movie, and then it turns into a kidnapping movie. Then it becomes a vampire flick once they get to the titty twister. This movie feels like that. It feels like, okay, when you're watching the movie, it feels like, okay, it's a heist, it's a kidnapping movie. Then it turns into a horror film, and it has lots of gore. This movie has lots of blood, lots. And so I went in this movie was like, it's fun. The movie's fun. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I thought Marissa Barrera, who is going through a lot of controversy right now, I think she was great in this movie. Regardless of how you feel about her as a person, I thought she was fantastic in this movie. I thought she was one of the strongest performances in the movie. Her and Dan Stevens are two of the greatest performances in the movie. Abigail's really good too. I do think she is a good actress, although there are some parts I feel like she was, but I understand why, because it's supposed to be deception. So whenever she's playing Abigail straightforward, I feel like she shines better than playing a helpless little victim. And I will say, I thought this movie has a lot of funny moments. I was laughing hysterically because it's almost like it's a horror comedy, okay? If you've seen Ready or Not, it is exactly like the tone of that movie. Where, when it's if you've seen Ready or Not, it's about the bride. It gets married and they play hide and seek, and then of course they end up hunting and killing her. And that's a funny movie though, because it's just so ridiculous. This movie has a lot of those beats. I've watched it with someone and they were like, this is dumb. There are parts where it's really, really good, and then there's parts really, really dumb. I'm like, but I appreciate that though, because it's fun to watch a movie like Abigail, because it's something new and it's not boring. I've never got bored watching this movie. In fact, I actually was like, man, this is actually really fun. There's a couple scenes I really liked in this movie. For one, I really, really liked, when Abigail does the ballet. There's a scene when they walk in, she's dancing with the head. I thought that was really great. And then she just fucks him up whenever, with the stakes and everything. And then, of course, whenever she whenever she turns Catherine, spoilers by the way, and she turns Catherine Newton's character, and then after she kills Kevin Durant, she literally just does a dance routine, and then she makes Catherine do it like a puppet, and it's so great. I thought that was so well done. And then of course, I thought also whenever Dan Stevens is really great as the villain. He's the human villain of this movie, where he's a cop. There's a whole backstory about how everybody has a backstory in this movie, but his backstory is he's a cop, and he doing this gangster shit so much that he left his family and became a full-time gangster. And then of course, after he got in some bad shit and everything, he went into hiding, and now he's being hired by Giancarlo Esposito, and he kind of works for Giancarlo Esposito. And Giancarlo Esposito gets him to kidnap the little girl and stuff, and it turns out he's a vampire who basically was going to get him to cover his own deception in the future and all that stuff, getting him killed along with that. But then realizes he actually brought him here so he could double cross Abigail, so that way they could kill the father, who I guess is Dracula, I guess. and then they could take over the criminal underworld, I guess. This movie, ironically, came out last year. This movie came out at the same time last year as another vampire flick, Renfield, which is a movie I only saw once, and I liked Renfield, but I thought it was okay, not great. This one I feel like is a much better vampire flick than Renfield. This movie I thought was a fun movie. It was well written, well directed. I mean, it knew when to be funny. There are sometimes where I got a little stupid. Like there are a few minor characters that I thought didn't really shine. Like for instance, the guy who plays Don Rickles. I feel like his character is just there. Like I feel like he was just there to be like the love interest, but then they never really have. They only have like a few flirty moments, but then they never really do nothing because he gets killed so early on. I kind of wish they would have built that up a little bit better, because it feels like okay, yeah, he's like a sniper in the Marines and they like each other, but then he dies so early on. I'm like, I wish they would have built that up before, you know. And I will say that I felt like Angus Cloud's character, who is like supposed to be like a tech guy or whatever, or no, he's the getaway driver, and he basically is just a junkie in this movie who is a getaway driver. And unfortunately, R.I.P. I just didn't like his character in this movie that much, because I feel like he was just like he just come off as annoying more than anything. Like he is like someone that you would just say, all right, go away, But that's nothing against the actor himself. Okay, like I've never seen Euphoria, so I don't know if he's. I mean, I've heard people say great things about him in that show, and so I'm sure he's great in other things. But in this movie, I just feel like he's too annoying as a character. But that's not to say he's not a great actor. He is, I'm sure, a great actor. But this one, I just feel like, oh, come on, really? Like, it's just like, until when he gets killed, you're just like, well, that, it was not like, it was annoying, but then when he gets killed, you're just like, all right, it kind of feels like they know where, like, the weaker spots in this are, then they take it out so that way, and I thought that was really interesting. I will say that Abigail, who her father is kind of like, okay, it's Dracula, right? Yep, it's Dracula, because it kind of basically establishes that, because it's like, okay, why is this universal property? And they keep hinting at who her father is. And there's hints in this movie about her being a vampire from beginning to end. I like that, because if you go into this movie blind and not watching the trailer like my friend did, you absolutely will see that. Look, this is a vampire. This is not a vampire flick until you get to the Abigail turning. And that's when it becomes, I felt like, more interesting. I know my friend felt like, no, that's where it becomes more dumber, because they said, my friend told me, who saw it with me, she said that this feels more like, the first text feel like something like Panic Room, but then it becomes more like a, like just a dumb, like gory film, like, I mean, I can see that, but I enjoyed it for what it is. It's a fun flick. There's a lot of great callbacks and a lot of Easter eggs. Radio Silence delivers a fantastic. It's well directed, well acted. It's great score by, it's a great score. There's even musical nods to Bela Lugosi's Dracula in this movie from Brian Taylor. Thank you, Brian Taylor. And, the movie does feel like a fun movie, especially the big third act battle with Dan Stevens and Melissa Barrera and Alicia Aguirre. That's a great final third act. And I mean, the movie has a lot of twists and turns. I thought was well done. And I will say, the only thing I had issue with when the vampire teeth were so big to where when they start talking, it's like they can't really speak because their mouth's full. I feel like that should have been more addressed better, maybe ADR over them. But other than that, this movie was fun. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen this movie, it's a really fun movie. If I had to give this movie a grade, I would give it an A-. Thank you so much.
I fucking hate ballet.